A few years back, the Atlantic Monthly ran a cover story about the importance of families sitting around a dinner table and eating. And they said it even affects the grades that kids have and that kind of thing. And so we're here to discuss, first of all, as we go into the table, like what kind of experiences we had growing up, the people in our church, and whether good or bad or indifferent, or what that was like and how that works. So I think when it comes to meals around a table and it's kind of joining, there is something about getting together with friends or family and just doing, what is it? And I know it's kind of obvious on one hand, but what is it about having a great mealtime together that's relaxing and enjoyable? Can you name that? Michael. That's one of the problems.
I think because we have our family tradition now, we've got 2 kids, and our family tradition now is we have dinner on Sunday nights, and we just have some of our friends that are like family, and they come over, and it's a really cool way to just unwind from the weekend. And obviously I work for a church, and so just kind of going through the stuff from the day and talking about stuff that gets missed throughout the week. Because you say stuff in passing, and my wife and I, obviously, we have kids at a young age, and so you just get so busy in the day in and the day out, and it's really just a cool time to just like reframe life and think about the things that are really going on, the things that really matter, the things that you forget to talk about in the daily grind of things. So that's what it's been for us.
And I wonder about the aid. Like right now, we're all sitting at a table and we're pretty high anxiety, to be honest with you. And so there's nothing relaxed about this moment.
Nothing.
So, but when you sit down, especially with food in front of you, what is it? Anybody got a stab at what is it that makes that special or helpful? I can see that you don't. Okay, what about?
I think I would just say being around people that you love and care about and are connected to.
Would it matter if there's food?
No. I mean,
really? Okay. Well, in my house,
that's where I'm different.
Okay. Well, how are you different? Why are you different?
I agree.
Yeah, I'm a foodie though. I love because we.
What does that mean, Michael? Why are you calling yourself a foodie?
But I like food, and I'm sure my physique shows that I like food. I like to be. It's a fun
we'll be
experiment.
Looking for survey
thing.
Comments on that.
Yeah, we like experimenting with different things. You can it's a cultural thing. I mean, you've got different styles of food, different genres of food, whether it's like Mexican, Italian, whatever. And for us, it's something that my wife and I will prepare dinner together, and then we'll talk about stuff days in advance or maybe that day, and just go out and we make it an ordeal for us. It's just kind of a fun thing to just be exposed.
Yeah, and the article I referenced really did say that it was kids sitting around the meal together.
Yeah.
There was something about that element, and I do find it intriguing that Jesus, the night before he died, he sat down and had a meal with his disciples. There was something to that, and I guess I'm kind of wondering that was one person said that was the symbol of the early church. It was the cross and it was a table, and that's why. So any other thoughts just about why the combination of food and company seems to work a little bit better than not having that? Of course, Kat doesn't care if we have it or not. So that's...
Right. Well, I think food is enjoyable.
Yeah.
You're doing something that's enjoyable together as a family. I mean, all of us like to eat.
Right, so you're a foodie as well?
I'm an equal opportunity eater. Absolutely.
There's equal opportunity eaters and foodies, and that works. So whether good or bad, or what was it like growing up, if you had that same effect, if you had family traditions or you didn't? What was mealtime like in your houses and your families?
My mom was a working mom, and so whenever the craziness of the day settled down, we actually had the opportunity to sit down. It was kind of like we finally got to rest a little bit and catch up with one another. So regardless of what she cooked for dinner, which usually honestly wasn't that good, she was not a great cook, but... But
she was on record calling him not a great cook.
Well, she would have said that about herself too.
Okay.
But it was just the chance to finally, the craziness of the day is done, wrestling practice with my brothers, school and homework and all of that, and then we finally got to just sit down and relax and talk to one another.
Yeah. And Kat, maybe some of I kidded you about the food thing a while ago, but we were talking before about when we talked about this was going to be about family and about meal times, you got a little nervous because it was a little, can you kind of flesh that out a little bit? Why were you nervous, and why was that kind of a negative image?
Yeah, I think for me growing up, family time wasn't anything. I mean, there wasn't family time for us. We didn't have family traditions. We didn't sit around the dinner table and eat dinner together. And so for me, that was a little bit like, oh, should I really be talking right now? Because I don't have those traditions to talk about.
Well, I'm glad you did, because I think a lot of people could relate to that. When you look back, and maybe this, I don't know if it's a good question or not, but as you look back on that, can you see kind of the negative effects, the effects of it? And name them what they are?
Most definitely, yeah. I would say the connection, there wasn't any conversation. There wasn't a connection point in our day.
So everybody just kind of became almost isolated from one another,
right,
in your family.
Yeah,
Michael,
definitely.
what mealtime look?
Yeah, ours was very similar to what Kat was saying just a second ago. I'm one of 11, and so
11.
Our dinner table. We had a dinner table. It was massive, but we didn't really sit around the dinner table. It was a permanent fixture in the house, but it wasn't really something that we sat around. Like, we would sit around it and have dinner like on Thanksgiving, right. But and I think so for me, like my stepdad was a traveling salesman, so he wasn't always there. And my mom worked midnights for most of my childhood. So from the time that I was like a teenager, excuse me, on up, I was making dinner for my brothers and sisters, and my stepdad would get home late, and so it wasn't always like we would just eat. And when you've got that many, it's just sort of like you just throw food at kids, just like you need to eat something. And
and your parents are fit. So I mean, there's 11 kids. You probably wouldn't probably the thought of sitting everybody down.
It's a feat. It's
okay.
a feat. That in of itself. But then there's just like the family dynamic didn't really lend itself to doing that. So that's why my wife and I've tried to be intentional about doing that with our boys.
Yeah, and to that, if as you have your own families, do you have like any big plans in your mind? Are you trying to do that in your life any different, or what are some of the ideas that you've had?
Yeah, my kids and I have two children, a 5-year-old and a 17-year-old, and we try to eat dinner together at least 3 times out of the week, if not upper to 5. So most definitely. Yeah.
Do you see their grades go up? Have you seen that?
I don't know about that.
Okay, all right, well, that's what the stats say. What about you, Natalie? You have like plans and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we eat dinner together every single night.
Every night?
Almost every single night, unless we're going out to dinner or something like that. We eat dinner together every night. And like tonight's a great example. I already told the kids, eat an early lunch because we're going to be having dinner at 4:30 because we have back to school stuff starting at 5 o'clock. So we make time to sit down together almost every single night.
And then you said 3 times a week, right?
At least 3 times a week.
Okay, so she's a better bar to go with. No one.
We aren't home every night during the week.
Yeah.
Now, believe it or not, the meal that in my own family we had kind of an idyllic thing was breakfast every morning, which I always, now that I look back, I feel bad for my mom. I mean, she got up extra early, she fixed breakfast, and my dad would read the Bible to us, and he would make us all hold hands and make us recite the Lord's Prayer. That's a true story. It really is. And the kids all hated it. We all I think if you saw it, I don't know that you would paint it as like this great thing. But now, do you guys go ahead and admit it? Do you do stuff like that? I mean, do you hold hands and read the Bible and do those sorts of things? I mean, look how I turned out. So, do you do anything like that with your meals?
I mean, I feel guilty now because I work at a church. I mean, yeah, we read the Bible like every night together, but
no, also not supposed to lie.
Not supposed to lie, right? We go around the table and we talk about what was the best part of your day, what was the worst part of your day, right. And honestly, that's the time that somebody may say something that was a really bad part of their day, and inevitably somebody ends up pointing them to Scripture that has something to say about that. So
really, like the other kids do that?
Absolutely. They do it with one another. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, ours is a little bit different because we have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so like right now we feel like we're trying to instill things in them right now at the age that they are. But so what my wife and I try to do is we try to make it where we don't talk about work at all at the dinner table. We're just talking about and there will be things that we end up talking about and just, what's stuff that's happening that week, but not work at all. Because inevitably you end up talking about some frustrating things and some things that are just kind of like, well, this isn't going the way I expected to, and all that. So we really try to make it about us and not necessarily about the things outside of our home. So that's really now as the kids, we're just trying to get our 3-year-old to sit at the table for more than 5 minutes and eat something more than chicken nuggets.
So he's not quoting a lot of scripture or any of that
No.
sort of thing. That's okay. That works. And do you guys kind of counsel one another or do any of that sort of thing? Or there's additional?
We, like Natalie, we ask questions of what was the best part of your day, what was the worst part of your day. But past that, it's, I have a 5-year-old and she pretty much is the conversation. So.
She is the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We all had that. That's
she
good.
carries it pretty well.
Now, let me shift gears just a little bit. Did you ever have the experience, because I think of, and especially when you follow the analogy in the New Testament with the table being a symbol of the church, and it's a symbol of belonging, among other things. Did any of you remember having the experience of walking in the lunchroom at school and not having a place to sit? Did anybody ever go through that? You're nodding heads, so can you talk about that just a little bit?
So I switched schools halfway through high school. I switched from Mater Dei to Central. And so I missed out on that freshman thing of here's how you do the lunchroom, here's where you get your tray, here's that. And at that time, back in the day, we were allowed to go out to lunch. And I would seriously go and sit and eat in my car rather than go into that lunchroom because I had no idea how it worked. I was terrified to go in there and look like an idiot, so I just ate in my car.
Hiding out?
Yep.
Did you hide out as well? Did you have that kind of experience?
So I think I didn't really have the best middle school, high school experience at all. I was the really quiet, kind of loner kid that just, sounds bad, but I would sit at the table by myself a lot of times.
You would go ahead, you would hide in your car?
Absolutely.
You have a car to
Just
hide
because
in.
I wasn't really, you would never know it now. But
that's true.
Or maybe you would.
That is true. Look at that. That's a transformation.
That sounds like you. But no, I was really the guy that was just I didn't have a whole lot of friends in school. And so there would be times where I would sit with people, but I wasn't really sought after. Right. So it's interesting though, as an adult now and seeing that, being able to identify that in other, there have been a couple of times where we've had Fuego events here at One Life, and where they'll have pizza and stuff like that before, and I'll see sometimes you see students that are sitting by themselves, just kind of, and I take it as an opportunity to walk up to them, just have some conversation, because there is something about being able to just sit down and have a meal with somebody that is just disarming, and is just sort of, maybe it gives you something to do, maybe that's something that we all have in common, so I think it's just kind of a cool opportunity to do that.
And that gets to what we were talking about. There is something, the food thing is, at least, especially if you're not socially there, you have something to do in case you can't think of what to say. I would love right now to have a meal
that would
I
be
was
amazing.
eating right now when we're all talking about it.
Can we get
You
a
nodded
cookie?
your head as well.
Chips
You
and
had the
salsa?
experience. One conversation at a time. So you had the experience of going in the lunchroom and.
Definitely, yeah. I was an outcast in school for sure.
You're an outcast?
Oh, yeah.
You were a loner. You were an outcast. You were hiding in your car.
I was a
Definitely.
That's right. And we're all
This
leading
is
this
super
place. That's
encouraging.
right.
I don't know about you guys.
Relate.
I'm really
That's amazing. So flesh out the outcast thing. What was that all about?
I don't remember a lot, to be honest, of my childhood. I don't remember a lot of going to school. I remember that I hated it.
It's not funny, but it might as well be.
I wasn't. I don't know. I don't know that I wasn't well liked, or if it was, I just didn't put myself out there.
Right. But there never was a moment where did anybody ever have that moment where you were kind of walking along and you didn't know what to do, and then someone did say, "Come sit here and."
It's going to sound really weird, but when you first started talking about it, I thought about the first time I went to Afghanistan, and this was I was in my 30s, so I'm sure I had one of those moments. But when you first started talking about it, the first thing I thought about was when we went to Afghanistan, and Afghanistan, they didn't. Where we ate at a friend's house, and they didn't eat at a table. They eat on the floor, and they just have these little pallets that they set on the floor with these large pillows, and then they put this feast out in front of everybody, and everybody just sits around. And I remember, I'd been married for several years up to that point, but it was the first time that we didn't know these people hardly at all. and they welcomed us into their home, and we got to sit in somebody's living room on their floor, and we were just passing around, and people were serving me food and asking me what I wanted, and it was just this really, and I hadn't really thought about it up until that point, but there is this sense of belonging, and there is this sense of connection that you do get to have because you're passing. It's something that's very universal, but it's something that's very personal when it comes to food. And somebody that is just helping, I don't know, there was just something kind of intangible about it that I didn't experience until I was in my 30s.
Yeah, and that is a known thing in that part of the world. There's Persian and there's the Middle Eastern culture. Meals are considered sacred for that reason. It's like, and especially that culture in particular, they pride themselves on their hospitality. Like I'm gonna serve a meal, and it's designed to, and they prepare for a very long time, and it's a very elaborate, no one gets in a hurry. This is like a 2-hour process, if at least, probably 3 hour in some ways. But it does say to you, you're welcome and you're one of us and you're a part of our family. And that's the significance around in the New Testament of those kinds of things. Jesus ate with sinners. For them, that was an enormous deal. It doesn't say quite as much to us.
And it was an opportunity for you to serve one another in a weird way. Like they wouldn't let us do anything. Like they brought everything out to us. Would you like more of this? Would you like more of that? And so in a weird way, it was a way for you to serve each other in a really tangible way.
Right, and maybe that's what it is, Kat. You need to remember that because the food thing is a deal.
Right.
It's.
I mean, I love food. But
okay, good. Thank you for.
I do love food.
Jumping in there.
Yeah.
You love food.
I do love food.
Be clear. Kat loves food. She was an outcast, and we need to invite her over, and we need to have a big meal for apparently for all of us.
I know. I feel like we all need to have
through
a meal
the
together.
lunchroom, kind of we're included in those things. So, and again, that's what we're doing with the series because it is a very appropriate metaphor for what the church is supposed to be. It's supposed to be this place where you belong and you're relaxed and you're serving one another. And there's just layers and layers and layers of what was going on with that. So hopefully everybody will join us and you'll learn a whole lot of what the local church is supposed to be. And again, I think it's important to point out that the table is a metaphor for something greater. It's what the church is supposed to be. And so that's one of the reasons that we're very big around here. One of our little statements that we say is that we do life in groups and teams. And so we encourage everybody to experience that table thing with one another. And so I know you guys have all experienced groups and teams and all that kind of thing. Some of those experiences are probably great and wonderful. Some of those experiences, maybe not so much, but that's also how family goes as well. So talk to me a little bit about your first experiences with groups. I'd like to ask you, Natalie, first. Okay, you're in the church thing, and you're going into a group for the first time, just trying to cooperate with the program. How'd it go?
Yeah. So we signed up at a connection event, and we were supposed to bring a dish, and I brought deviled eggs. And when I walked in, I had never really met any of these people before, but I brought in my little deviled eggs, and I said, "Here, I brought some deviled eggs." And she said, "Oh, no, we call those angeled eggs here. We're not going to give the devil any credit for something so good."
No, you're completely making that up.
I am not making it up.
True.
It is really true. It is really true.
It's really true. Somebody
it's
said
really
they
true,
call
and
that
I
angel
felt
egg.
horrible because I was kind of new to the whole Christian thing to begin with, and I was like, my whole life I've called these deviled eggs. I had no idea there was another word for it. I didn't even know. I mean, now that I'm a Christian, they got to be angeled eggs. What does that say about devil's food?
The questions just mount. That needs to be a subject of the group thing. So this might be a training on what not to do when someone shows up at your door.
Bring chips and salsa.
Yeah, that's right. What to bring.
That's
right. So it wasn't. It was initially kind of awkward. Did awkwardness ever go away? I got to ask. Or did it stay there and then you slipped out later and then we went back?
We stayed with that group through that study, and then when it was over, we launched our own group.
Okay, launch your own group with Sid. Michael, what about you? Can you remember your first experience with things?
I think our first really profound group experience was at One Life when we were in Henderson, and it was a group of people that helped launch One Life Henderson, and we just started a group from there. And what was really cool is, that was before we all had kids and, like real grown-up responsibilities, I guess. And, we would, it was on Friday nights and group would start at 6:30 and we wouldn't end sometimes until 10 or 11. And we would just be sitting there and sitting on the floor, sitting on the couch, just sharing stories. And I remember we had, some people that just first came to the group, and that we would just spend time like getting to know their story, and sometimes it was just all about that one person that one night, and sometimes it was just about a specific study. But it was very much about getting into people's lives, hearing their story, getting to know who they were, and you really didn't have. I mean, the nature of the people that were in our group, there wasn't an out. You didn't get to not share everybody, and they wanted to make sure you didn't didn't want you to feel alienated, but it was just there was a time where everybody had to share something, and there was a commitment. It wasn't really spoken as, but commitment really from everybody. That's just like, if you're going to be a part of this group, we're going to be in each other's lives, and those relationships are still there to this day. We don't group together with all of them still, but my wife and I had dinner with a couple that we were in that group with this past week, and another couple weeks ago, and so we still share life with them. They're the ones that our boys call aunt and uncle, and so it's been that has been really cool, and that was just when we started Henderson 8 years ago. So
that's kind of important to know too. Sometimes you start with this sort of formal design, and then and I love the fact that you wouldn't allow anybody not to share. It's good to know to everybody, but that it continued on. It's like you start with a formal structure and then you begin to move out from there. Kat, as we talked about, we kind of kidded you about the meal thing, but you also talked about experience going beyond that into the Christian grouping thing and how that went. So you were invited to a group, and how'd that go?
Yeah, I was invited by who is now a very dear friend of mine, and little did I know when she invited me that her and her family would change my life and shift my relationship with Jesus altogether. And now on Friday nights, I have dinner with their family, and Sundays after church, and myself and my kids get to experience that family and what family is like.
So now you do have a family experience on Friday and Sunday nights, but that started with being invited into a group. We're not making this up. This is not like it's a commercial. These are not paid actresses or anything like that. So you really did have that experience. Somebody invited you. But you had to go to the front door and walk into a room. How many people were there?
There were probably 20 plus people.
Not all of them had that, by the way. There was 20 plus.
Yeah.
Did you know anybody in the room?
I did know a couple of people,
right?
But not a lot of them.
When it launched in, I mean, did you think this is weird, or did you think, oh, this is kind of cool? I mean, which thing did you think in your head?
No, I thought it was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
For me, being able to be around other people.
Right.
That were like-minded in so many ways, but then also not necessarily like-minded was amazing for me. Just to be able to have that experience, the connection, and just the relationship.
Yeah. Well, one of my greatest experiences, and I am going to be pushing this, if you will, in a growth group kind of situation. It's been years ago. We did have a meal together. We had a Thanksgiving meal together, and we were coached by the church to have communion together. And speaking of that sharing thing, this will scare everybody to death, but that's okay. You'll be fine. But we had a time of confession where we went around before we took communion together at the table of confessing our sins one to another. And I still remember, it marked my life. I will never forget that. People being so honest and so deep and experiencing that table thing and all that kind of stuff. Can you look back on maybe one particular thing that happened in a group context quickly that marked you in that way, that you just kind of look back and go, wow, that was a moment that really,
I would say,
I'm not sure I'll forget.
For me, so I've been on staff for a little over 4 years, I think, and there was a season there for a couple of years. It was really dark and really, really hard for me personally, and I could see where even though I was on staff and around people all the time and leading teams and all of that stuff, I felt within me that sort of this just like I just wanted to withdraw. And on Sunday mornings, even though I was on staff, like I would come on Sunday mornings and just sort of want to fade into the background. And there were people in my group that would not let me do that. There were people in my group that were seeking after me and my wife during the week, and just inviting us over for dinner or just engaging us through conversation. And I think I think there are a lot of people that might walk in and just feel that they might walk in on a Sunday morning and they just feel that sense of just sort of like, I don't really know anybody and I want to just be able to fade into the background. And I think that works for a little bit of time. I think some people need that. Yeah. But I think there comes a time where when you walk in and people need to know if you're not walking in that next Sunday. I think people want to be missed, and
that's a good way to look at it. It's a
yeah,
good line. People want to be missed.
They want to know that they have significance. That if they don't show up, that somebody's going to notice, and so I think there's something beyond the Sunday morning experience that people really have to have, and so I don't know if that answers your question or not, but what was really, really helpful for me was having people that would seek after me, because it can be really lonely. I mean, even being on staff, it can just be really, really lonely, and you're just sort of like, in the stage of life, we don't know what we're doing. I mean, I don't know am I messing up my kids? Or am I messing up my marriage? Or it can be really, really lonely and isolating. And I think you have to have those people that are constantly pursuing you.
I think it's the same effect. Going back to the metaphor, it's like we've all had the experience of walking through the lunchroom, maybe not all, but most of us, and not feeling like you have a place to sit and you don't belong. And so it's the same exact thing. It's just on an adult level. We're walking into church and we don't have a place to sit in the lunchroom, and we want someone to invite us in and include us in those things. Natalie, can you think of any something that kind of marked your life that happened in a group context?
Oh, absolutely. With the group that we launched, it grew to 6 to 8 couples, and after the birth of my son, he was about maybe 6 to 8 weeks old, and he got RSV, which is like a lung virus, and he was hospitalized. And one couple from our group kept my other kids while we were in the hospital with my son, and then another couple from the group, the wife came and spent the night with me in the hospital, taking turns holding my son so that I could get some sleep. And I mean, it was just unbelievable, the care that they provided for my family. And I mean, baby was only about 6 to 8 weeks old. Like, I already was exhausted to begin with. Sure. And then they were bringing us meals when we got home from the hospital. It was just an incredible display of love.
Yeah, and those kind of heroics do happen in a group context. It wouldn't have been the same probably if the professional minister had shown up and did those things. Let's just be honest. But there are things when you're in teams and groups, you can see one another and you can see what's happening and you can react to that kind of thing. And so that's why we do push that so much.